All right, this is Rick Watson with RMW Commerce here with the Vice President of Business Development for Ryder and recent sponsor of our RMW Commerce NRF event, Brian Weinstein. So welcome to the video here.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate you guys having us on. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. We're excited. I mean, we just got through NRF. Obviously, a lot of AI discussion, a lot of retail stores discussion, and then start to the year, new administration, new year for budgets for retailers and shipping companies, new regulations that have been changing. But before we get to 2025, we kind of have to talk about peak, don't we?
We do. We do. I mean, it's that topic. Everybody wants to do a little bit of a post mortem on the peak, right?
Exactly. I mean, I'd be interesting. You guys work with so many customers. What were some of the most surprising things that you noticed during peak, which is compressed peak this year?
It was, but it's been interesting because I guess really coming out of COVID and even into this year, just through the trends continued, the brands are starting earlier, right? They're getting their sales out. They're
Right.
trying not to create that bottleneck and all that pressure directly during peak. So that's one of the biggest things that we've found with our customers and how they've approached going into peak every year.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so we have a compressed peak this year. Everyone kind of knew this coming in. Amazon and other people like told brands to get their inventory into Amazon by like August this year. It was last year. It was crazy. And then supply chain in 2024, I would say generally the system, if you look at the big mega carriers in the United States, Amazon, FedEx, UPS, and even USPS, there's a lot of slack in the system still. And so like
Yep.
people are shutting down facilities or consolidating facilities. So we're not in a point where we're breaking the limits of the supply chain like we were in 2021, 2022.
Yeah, that's really true. And it was so bad as we all experienced, right? You had that where it was like you were begging trucks to come and make the pickups, and even
That's
though you
right.
had done your forecast and your planning, it was like every day it was a nail biter. Are they actually going to send that extra truck in that you were expecting?
Well, you're bringing me
Um,
back to COVID. I'm trying to forget some of these memories, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but you know what? It was a learning experience, and it was a learning experience for all the carriers. They went out, they built, expecting those 20-30% growth year over year, and it's leveled out to a degree where
Yeah,
it's more sustainable for them, and they have this extra capacity.
that's right. Yeah, so anything that came out other than the fact that it went pretty smoothly?
No, I mean, there's still a bit of a trend where instead of going after products, a
Hmm.
lot of the consumers are looking for experiential gift giving. So
Mm-hmm.
there's more of the concert tickets and
Hmm.
travel, and I think a little bit more of the money's going that way. I think there's this, there's still the trend that people want to go online as opposed to going to brick and mortar, but not as much as
Right.
it was before, right? You couldn't go before, but
Yeah.
now you've got this. People are still looking online, and I always say you go into a brick and mortar, which is still very strong, but you've got a limited amount of SKUs, a limited amount
Mm-hmm.
of brands that you can go after. Where online you just have you have this much broader breadth.
Yeah, and Amazon was trying to get people to stay on their couches during Black Friday. It seems like it worked.
Yeah.
Because Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it seems like it hit new records, compared to previous year. Even though store traffic seemed to grow as well as a proportion, especially last minute. Um, Post mortem.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know, like, look, I always like to say in the shipping business, 100% is zero, meaning like
Right.
if you hear nothing, you're doing a perfect job. If you hear
Exactly.
absolutely anything at all, it's like huge complaints.
Yes. Yes.
Having
Exactly
worked
right.
for carriers in the past, the what didn't go well, or what did brands and shippers and even providers like yourself looking for 2025, and like, do we need to tweak some things as we go into peak?
Well, I mean, I'll just start with with where 2025 is right now. I don't think we're not yet coming out of that period where there was the growth
Mm,
at any cost. that
Mm-hmm.
was going on before, and we're still on. The brands are still looking for achieving like sustainable profitability.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, going to still continue to be a key focus in 2025. Now, how they go about that, is really what's going to define how the brands succeed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 2024, I always thought that Walmart set the pace for the year where they said, look, in the next 3 years, we're going to grow profits faster than revenue. And that's our plan. Like, that's really what we're aiming for. And I think a lot of people in the industry really took a cue from that. They delivered on that plan. Walmart has been rocking from a growth point of view. I kind of thought this year, coming into 2025, that brands would sort of step on their growth accelerator a little bit more. That hasn't happened in the first month, from what I can tell as well. So I think I would agree with your assessment there.
Yeah, because, and especially for smaller brands, right, where they've
Mm,
been waiting for PE or VC money to come off the sidelines,
right,
right? So, and there, that's only gonna that'll only be for the brands that are at least showing projections to be profitable, if not profitable already.
right.
So they've got to continue to focus on that, and they've
Yeah.
got to continue to make themselves better. Forecast, demand planning, making sure that they're bringing the product in closer to when they need it
Mm,
is a huge advantage for cash flow, for example.
yeah. So like shorten supply chains, like what I'm hearing from you, shorten supply chains, increase turn, which is like a huge factor in terms of how much cash is tied up in your retail business. Um,
Yeah, 7 to 10 days makes a huge difference to a company's cash flow.
right.
It really is incredible, and it
Yeah.
just allows them to do that much more.
Yeah. Did you see any labor issues this past peak, or do you think brands have kind of normalized to that, or and the carriers?
There's a little bit of a normalization that goes on.
Mm,
There's also a usage of tech, of automation rather, that you can use really for those repeatable tasks.
mm,
And if you, the more you can use that type of automation, something simple, right?
mm.
Automation is not for every brand, and I will tell you that
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that get caught up in the sexiness of automation,
Mm,
where it doesn't necessarily,
right.
you've not all automation is one size fits all. But if you
Right.
could use it for those repeatable tasks, then you can make sure you're deploying your best labor
You
onto
mean like within
tasks
a facility?
within a facility.
Yeah.
Exactly right, and that helps brands a lot, and that helps the 3PLs a lot, obviously, with the labor, if there is any pinches at all.
Yeah. I mean, look, I like to say that if your inputs are bad and your process is bad and your people aren't well trained, automation will just let you screw up faster.
Yes, exactly right,
So
exactly right.
it's like, which is essentially you're gonna like more money is gonna be leaving the door because not only you're gonna have to do it once, you're gonna have to clean up for all those mistakes that you made.
Right, right, right. And again, I mean, not to go down the whole rabbit hole of automation, but if you choose the wrong automation,
Mm,
there comes pinch points during peak where the wrong automation can create such a logjam
right.
that there's nothing you can do. So you really have to be very particular when you're communicating, the types of volumes you do all the way through from normal days to peak days, and can you handle that with the automation that you're choosing?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Looking at the kind of the state of supply chain and, re- you know, people are investing less. I find in like these big supply chain projects. You look at Amazon, in the past 5 years, they've been investing 20 billion a year in supply chain.
Yeah.
Last year, they cut that way back. They're closing facilities. They're pushing out leases. They're subleasing some of their leases, and all that money is going into AI. Do you see reduced investment in infrastructure going forward and like more maximizing the use of that infrastructure? How do you see the state of play and
Well,
supply chain from that point of view?
I do so from a certainly from the 3PL's perspective, and again, not to keep harkening back to the COVID days, but post COVID, there was such a buildup of inventory, and space was actually tough to come by pretty much anywhere in the U.S.
Right.
And now, as people have right sized their inventory more, now they have this glut of. I mean, Amazon's going through it. A lot of 3PLs are out there that have the capacity, and so what they're doing now is either shutting facilities, or they're continuing to just look for ways to fill it properly
Hmm.
with better opportunities that work for both the brand and the 3PL. So it's the right space, it's the right customer. But yeah, it's really about driving efficiency. It's about driving and maximizing what you have.
Yeah, no, that seems to be a theme on both the brands and the 3PLs and logistics providers. Um,
Rick, I think it's like we talked about when you have such the high levels,
hmm,
the unsustainable levels of growth that went on from
hmm,
2020 to 2022. Um, it's really starting to right size and normalize, which is
right,
where we should be. It's healthy,
right.
but it's just a matter of rebalancing.
Yeah, and definitely if you look at UPS earnings, they're still, right size network. They're
Yep.
cutting down their facilities. They're driving more traffic and parcels through their automated facilities. A lot of those things, and I think I see that across FedEx as well. They've been closing, like shuttering planes, to consolidate their network. It sounds like um, that's been a key strategy. How about on the brand side? Supply chain is always a big part of this P&L of a carrier costs, cost of goods, and marketing. Those are kind of the big
Yep.
three costs for a brand. As if you're a CFO looking at supply chain costs today, like what are the levers that you look to for 2025 right now?
Well, so it goes to relationship. It goes to what you're looking to get from your supply chain. For the brands, the cost of customer acquisition being so high, retention is huge, right? Getting and retaining a customer
Yeah.
is huge. I mean, listen, even on the 3PL side, right? You want to retain your customers. It's even more important sometimes than bringing in new customers, especially if you have really quality customers.
Hmm.
So making that decision, are you going to go low cost? Or you want to find a provider that's going to ensure that you can reach your customer promise. And I think that's a key decision from a
Mm,
P&L perspective for these brands. Are they going to get from their 3PLs what they need? And are they going to be there to support that
got it.
customer promise and delivery?
How do you know, like, imagine there are a lot of brands in the audience. How do they know that they're in the wrong 3PL?
Well, if you've got, and it depends. What may have been the right 3PL for you
Hmm.
to start as you're growing might not be as you're scaling. If you've got a 3PL, first of all, onboarding. If you started with a 3PL and right out of the gate you're like, is this the way we should be onboarding? Then
Right.
then you then you've
It's a warning
chosen
sign.
exactly. That's a red flag. So I think you get to that, but it's a lot. Everything is planning.
Hmm.
There's so much conversation that you should be having with your 3PL about planning. What's your forecasts look like?
Hmm.
What are the events that you have coming up? Because it's a relationship that's should almost be as if you work together
Yeah.
and not as if it's a division within your organization that you would invite into your
Got it.
meetings. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is the key to the success of the relationship. When you're not seeing those types of planning conversations, when you don't have a success manager that's working on strategy with you, those
Right.
are the types of things. That's when you know you're not with the right provider.
That's critical. I'm always a huge believer of treating your suppliers as strategic partners. And if
Yeah.
that's not there, then they're left to deal with the after effects, which is hugely an inefficient way to do business. And then everyone's upset at each other because the 3PL didn't know about the promotion and the marketing person didn't know. They were supposed to tell the operation and supply chain team, which kind of gets back to kind of two things: planning,
Yep.
adjusting the plan. So, what do you see? Like, imagine that weekly meeting that needs to happen between the groups. Who's in that room from a planning point of view, ideally in your mind?
It's really going to be the ops people from both sides, right? It's who's
Hmm.
ever running the ops on the brand side as well as the operations folks. We always like to have all levels. It could be an operations manager, it could be supervisor, some of the
Uh huh.
leads coming in and having those conversations, talking about forecasts. We have customer success people that are involved from our side that might be talking with the design team on the brand side. You know, that could be, hey, we're because you've got your short term, what's happening next week,
Right.
and what are you looking for next quarter? Because
That's
you know,
right.
brands might want to change the way they pack for their customer experience, and so having those conversations and being well out in front just allows for a very smooth operation as you go, and then talking about what didn't work last week,
Hmm.
right? What didn't work,
No one wants to talk
where
about that.
yeah, but you have to, right? If you
Right.
don't, listen, everybody's going to make mistakes. If you are not willing
Yeah.
to sit at a table and say, "Hey, we screwed that up,"
Yeah.
let's and come up with a solution to fix it before you worry about the costs of it and who's going to do what and compensate where. That's the most important thing. And by the way, another sign of a true partner.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, you mentioned that weekly meeting. Some people I would love to throw into that room, or your head of marketing
Yeah.
at the brand who's understanding like what is your promotional cadence, which could
Yep.
hugely affect kind of volume on a day-to-day basis, and your head of customer service to make sure that any problems coming in, like both sides know about, like the marketing team knows about,
Yep.
because they're hearing the complaints real time. Like the
Right.
warehouse, stuff rolls downstream, as they say. So
Yep.
they'll hear about it eventually, but the customer service team, there should be the eyes and ears on the ground.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
No, that's great. I mean, I'll wrap up. One of the conversations I wanted to pick your brain about was nearshoring. Definitely, it's a trend. UPS has mentioned huge investments in Mexico in these calls. There's obviously been every day there's a different story in the news about what the tariff is or what it not is. Um, how when you have different manufacturing locations, it seems like the complexity of running your business increases. What are some of those challenges that come up?
From right now, and let me just jump over to nearshoring for a second. It's because it's obviously clear as mud right now what's going on with everything, and you know, not being, I would say, from a brand perspective, anyone that wasn't a single source provider is probably in a little bit of a better position, just
Hmm.
based on everything that's going on. You know, we as an organization have facilities in North America, so we're Canada, U.S., and Mexico based, and a lot of it's doing intra within those countries. So we have a whole intra Mexico operation, intra Canada, intra US, and Ryder does a lot of cross border transportation, moving product back and forth. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how all this shakes out. Obviously, the new
Yeah.
administration's coming in. It is keeping the industry on its toes, to say the least.
Yeah, keeping us on its toes. I expect 2025 to keep us on our toes, and we're gonna definitely be monitoring the tensions here at RMW Commerce. And I definitely encourage anyone in the audience to talk to Ryder to help them with their supply chain operations and planning in 2025 as well. So it's been really great having this conversation with you today, Brian.
No, thanks for having me on, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.